Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 5. Just wanted to do what I normally do. I know I'm sort of day late, but I apologize for that. Talking a little bit about sort of where we are in the course and where we're going. Right now, we're in sort of a little bit of a holding pattern. The next writing assignment that you're going to do is not due till Module 6, right? So it's another week where we're sort of digesting what we're reading and looking forward to the future. What I would suggest, though, is that you take the time to look at that assignment, right? It's outlined in the course information module and begin planning for it, right? I did want to point out some things from last week's discussion forums that I thought were quite good, right? This idea, and I like how we actually had kind of a debate for the first time, I think, in the semester. People were staking out different positions and sort of engaging in an analysis of what was really happening. I thought it was really good, right? I thought that there was a really good case made by people like Blake, Monique, and Taylor Hugh about the Trump administration being sort of a breakwater, right, for the blob, right? That it had managed to sort of change the dynamic in Washington, change the debate, at least rhetorically, and then sort of some more critical answers from people like Taylor Buckles, Catherine, and I, who sort of really pushed the idea that while there was a lot of rhetoric, that the actual sort of institutional priorities of U.S. foreign policy didn't seem to change all that much, right? Which really, I thought, brought up this really productive discussion about what it means to disrupt foreign policy narratives, what it means to effectively do that, and whether or not the institutional conditions are related to it. And that was what I was trying to get at with my rebuttal, right? Which was that while most people who looked, the sort of general population who looked at Trump as a disruptive force in foreign policy, they actually didn't see a sort of larger change in U.S. strategic outlook. They still wanted sort of a more sort of hands-on direct approach. They just wanted it in a different way, right? Which I thought led to a series of interesting questions. I also wanted to point out Taylor Buckles' point about how it's really important that we think about these narratives as sort of pluripotential, right? I thought it was really interesting how she unpacked the idea that American exceptionalism in and of itself is neither good nor bad for U.S. foreign policy. It's how it's interpreted and applied to specific cases that matters, right? So if a sense of U.S. exceptionalism is what drives us to be sort of aggressive in waging wars of choice in the Middle East and so on and so forth, which is destructive to our U.S. national security and global order, then it's bad. But if it's something that drives us to be engaged, to address actual peer competitors in a sort of robust and direct way, then it's not so bad. And I thought that was really interesting. What we're going to do this week is we're going to continue this discussion about how institutionally foreign policy is shaped, right? So hopefully by this point in the term, we're all very clear that foreign policy narratives are not sort of defined the day a new president takes office and they last so long as that president is in office. Cable news, sort of like the news cycle, tends to treat it that way, but analytically, that's not really the case, right? These concepts have a very deep and long history that we know about, right? That we need to understand, and that actually institutions, pressures from the electorate, and individual presidencies will operate within this context, right? And to understand what U.S. foreign policy is and what it might ought to be and why that gap is there is really what we're going to deal with this week. So as you sort of reading, I wanted you to take that into consideration, right? What we're talking about really at the end of the day is how institutionally, politically, bureaucratically, these sort of narratives are maintained and applied, right? And what I'm really looking forward to is our discussion forum this week is looking at China, right? And not necessarily just saying, what we think about China, but thinking about how these processes, this history of U.S. foreign policy, this institutional dynamic, these things that we now understand, how they're influencing and shaping how we think about China as a rising peer competitor. And there's another great episode of Net Assessment, the podcast from earlier in the term, that we're going to use in order to do that, right? So looking forward to hearing from all of you. I will note that I'll probably be a little more absent than normal in the discussion forums this week because I'm away at a conference in St. Louis starting tomorrow morning. I will make sure that I sort of go in there and give you guys an update and some thoughts of what I'm thinking. But just a note that I might not be as present as normal, but I'm still paying attention. So have a good night, have a good weekend. Looking forward to hearing from all of you on the discussion forums.